The villagers noticed. They began to whisper among themselves that perhaps Ngozi had finally chosen. Some said the gods had favored Uchenna, that he would soon rise in wealth and honor if Ngozi became his wife. Others grew jealous, for they too had long sought her. But Uchenna understood more than they knew. He saw the snare of death drawing closer, the same snare that had swallowed many before him. He did not fear, but he was careful not to reveal the knowledge burning in his heart. He pretended to smile back, to meet her glance, to play the part of a man caught in her charm. And so the stage was set. It happened on a night when the sky was clear and the stars bright. The air was filled with the smell of ripe fruit and the sound of night crickets. That evening, Ngozi invited Uchenna to her hut. She did not do so openly. Instead, she moved close to him while others were busy, her voice low, her smile warm. The villagers saw them together and began to exchange knowing looks. Later, when Uchenna was seen walking in the direction of her hut, the whispers grew louder. Some nodded in approval, some shook their heads in envy, and some sighed in relief, believing that at last Ngozi's heart had settled. But none of them knew that death itself had prepared a feast that night. Ngozi's hut stood at the edge of the village, apart from the others. The thatched roof glistened in the moonlight, and a faint smell of herbs drifted from within. Uchenna walked slowly, each step heavy with the weight of destiny. In his hand, hidden beneath his wrapper, he carried the small clay lamp the priest had given him. Its flame was faint but steady, covered so no eyes could see it. When he reached her hut, Ngozi welcomed him with the sweetness of a long-awaited lover. Her eyes sparkled, her voice was soft, and her movements graceful. She offered him palm wine. She laughed lightly, and she sat close beside him. Her beauty seemed to shine brighter in the dim light of the oil lamp inside the hut. But Uchenna was not deceived. He noticed the way her eyes flickered strangely when she leaned near. He felt the air grow heavier, as though something unseen was moving around them. He tightened his grip on the hidden clay lamp, whispering silently in his heart for strength. Ngozi placed her hand on his arm, her body pressing closer. To any other man, this would have been the fulfillment of desire, but for Uchenna, it was the moment he had waited for. He knew that soon the serpent within her would reveal itself. The night deepened, and the village outside grew quiet. The laughter of children faded, the drums ceased, and only the cries of night birds pierced the air. Inside the hut, the danger thickened like smoke. Ngozi smiled, her face near his, her breath warm. And as her chest touched his, the secret began to stir. He felt it, something alive moving beneath her flesh, something writhing, coiling, preparing to strike. The serpent was waking. The hut was silent except for the faint hiss of the oil lamp. The air grew warmer, pressing heavy on Uchenna's skin. He sat still, his heart steady, though every part of him knew the hour of danger had come. Ngozi leaned closer. Her body moved against his, and her smile widened, but her eyes no longer looked like the eyes of a woman. They glowed faintly like embers hidden beneath ash. Then it began. At first it was only a shifting beneath her chest, like a ripple under cloth. But soon the movement grew stronger. Something alive pressed against her skin, stretching, bulging, writhing. A sound followed, low, sharp, and filled with menace. A hiss. Uchenna kept his face calm, though his hand trembled slightly around the hidden clay lamp. Ngozi's beauty twisted as her body betrayed its secret. From her breast, the serpent began to rise. Its head pushed through her skin, as though her flesh were nothing but a doorway. Scales glistened in the dim light, black and green like the belly of a storm. The snake's eyes shone red, its tongue flicking, its body coiling as it slid out of her. The sight was dreadful. What had seemed like the chest of a beautiful woman was in truth a pot of death, carrying a serpent that had feasted on the lives of men. The serpent rose higher, its fangs gleaming, its hiss filling the hut. Ngozi's face did not change. She smiled still, as if nothing strange was happening, as if this was her truest self revealed at last. The snake turned toward Uchenna, its mouth opening wide, ready to strike. At that moment, Uchenna pulled out the clay lamp. He uncovered it, and the faint but steady flame leapt into the darkness. The instant the light touched the serpent, the creature recoiled. It hissed louder, thrashing in anger, its body twisting violently. Ngozi screamed, not with the voice of a woman, but with a sound that was neither human nor animal. She tried to cover the flame with her hand, but the fire burned too pure. The serpent writhed, its body half inside her and half out, caught between the darkness that had hidden it and the light that now exposed it. Uchenna held the lamp firmly, raising it higher, letting the flame shine fully on her chest, and then the truth burst forth. Ngozi's body began to change. Her skin cracked like dry clay, her beauty melting away. The serpent forced itself fully from her chest, spilling out with a horrible sound. Her face twisted, her eyes rolled back, and her voice broke into 1,000 shrieks. The hut shook as though the earth itself was angry. The oil lamp on the floor shattered, smoke filled the air, and still Uchenna held the little clay lamp of truth, its flame refusing to die. With a final cry, the serpent lunged at him, its mouth wide, fangs sharp. But Uchenna thrust the flame forward. The fire touched its head, and in that instant, the creature burst into smoke and ash. Its body dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the foul smell of burnt scales. Ngozi fell to the ground, her body weak, her beauty gone. She lay there trembling, her chest empty, no serpent left within her. Her secret had been revealed, her power broken. The noise of the struggle had already reached the village. Men and women came running with torches, shouting, their voices trembling with fear and curiosity. They pushed open the hut, and what they saw froze them in their tracks. They saw Ngozi lying on the floor, her chest burned and empty. They saw the ashes of something that had once been alive, but was now destroyed. And they saw Uchenna standing tall, the clay lamp in his hand, its flame still burning steady. The villagers gasped. They began to murmur among themselves. At last the truth had been brought into the open. The deaths of their sons, brothers, and fathers were no longer a mystery. The serpent that had fed on them had been hiding in the very breast of the woman they admired. Some fell to the ground in shock. Some wept loudly. Some shouted in anger, and some simply stared, unable to believe what their eyes had seen. Uchenna stood quietly, letting the flame speak for him. The priest's words rang in his heart. Where the fire of truth burns, no shadow can hide. At that moment, the people of Okuta understood. They understood why their men had been dying, why the village had been living under a silent curse. And they understood who had carried that curse into their midst. Ngozi lay still, her eyes dull, her voice faint. She no longer had the strength to rise, for the serpent that had given her power was gone forever. The villagers turned to Uchenna, their faces filled with awe and gratitude. They saw him not just as a stranger, but as the savior who had delivered them from years of hidden terror. That night the secret of Ngozi's breast was no longer hidden. The truth had come out, and justice had begun. The villagers stood in silence, their torches flickering against the thatched walls of Ngozi's hut. The smell of burnt serpent still hung in the air, bitter and heavy. Women held their children close. Men gripped their machetes as if ready to strike, and the elders looked on with faces darkened by sorrow and shame. For a long moment no one spoke. They could not believe that the woman they had praised, the beauty they had admired, the one they had trusted with smiles and songs, had been the vessel of their pain. Then an old woman, bent with age and wisdom, broke the silence. She lifted her hand and said that it was time the people saw the truth with their own eyes. Slowly, she stepped forward, her torchlight falling on Ngozi's broken body. What they saw confirmed everything. Ngozi's chest bore deep cracks, as though her flesh had been a clay pot shattered from within. The once smooth skin was scarred and blackened. There was no beauty left in her, no sweetness in her smile. She was nothing but the shell of the woman they once adored. The people wailed. Mothers cried for their sons who had died at her hands. Fathers groaned for their lost strength. Young men beat their chests in anger. For years they had wondered why their brothers fell one by one, and now the answer was lying naked before them. Some of the men, in their rage, raised their machetes, ready to cut her down. But the elders stopped them. They said the matter was not just for men's anger, but for the judgment of the gods. Ngozi was dragged to the village square, where the great Iroko tree stood as witness to all truth. There the people gathered until no hut was empty. Even children too young to understand clung to their mothers, sensing the weight of the moment. Ngozi lay weak at the foot of the Iroko. Her eyes no longer carried pride. She looked around, perhaps for mercy, perhaps for escape, but none came. It was the oldest elder, a man with hair white as cotton, who spoke. He told the people that beauty without goodness is like ripe fruit filled with poison. He said Ngozi had been a snare, a curse dressed in fine clothes, and he declared that such a one couldn't remain among the living, for her presence had already consumed too many souls. The villagers agreed. Their voices rose like thunder, calling for her to be sent back to the earth, where the serpent spirit that had lived in her could find no more victims. And so, before the eyes of all, Ngozi was tied to the great Iroko. The clay lamp that had revealed her secret was placed at her feet. Fire was set, and the flames climbed slowly, eating away the last trace of her cursed life. She screamed once, a sound that made even the birds flee from the trees, and then she was silent. Smoke rose high into the night sky, carrying her memory away. When it was over, the people bowed before Uchenna. They called him deliverer, savior, the stranger who had brought light into their darkness. Some knelt, others touched his feet, and many wept with gratitude. But Uchenna did not boast. He stood quietly holding the clay lamp, its flame now soft but still alive. He told them he had come not for praise but for justice, for his own brother had fallen to Ngozi's serpent breast, and now that justice was done, his heart was at rest. The priest of the village came forward and declared that from that day, no one would ever again worship beauty without first seeking the truth behind it. He warned the young men not to chase after shining faces without looking at the heart within. He told the women to remember that what a person hides inside may be more deadly than what is seen outside, and the people listened. In the days that followed, the village of Okuta found peace again. No more young men died mysteriously. No more mothers wept without reason. Life returned to its calm rhythm of farming, fishing, and laughter under the moonlight. As for Uchenna, he did not remain in Okuta. After the mourning was done and the people had buried the ashes of their sorrow, he took his leave. They begged him to stay, to be their leader, even to take a wife among them, but he refused. His spirit told him his journey was not yet finished. He walked away with nothing but the clay lamp in his hand, its flame still burning. Some said he went from village to village, seeking out other hidden evils. Others believed he returned to his own land, carrying stories of what he had seen. None could say for sure, but one thing was certain: his name lived on. Long after he was gone, mothers told their children the story. They warned their daughters never to trust beauty without truth. They warned their sons never to run blindly after desire. And they told them of Uchenna, the man who carried a small flame but used it to expose a darkness greater than the village had ever known. And so the tale was sealed. None of them had known that her breast was a snake pot until that night when the truth came out. And from that night on, the village never forgot.